Okay, so for today is March 17th, and this is the Family Medicine Grand Rounds. The event code for today is 76047. And if you need to register for CME credit, please make sure that you do so before midnight tonight. The information there through the phone number or through the computer is listed. And so for today, if you could, for right now, put your microphone on mute as we begin, and also be engaged in the session. We will be having some breakout rooms later, so that will give everybody a chance to have some discussion. But also, once we're finished, I will be sending out a link for everybody to complete and submit a session evaluation for us, if you can help us out with that. And so this is the South Texas Regional Family Medicine Grand Rounds, and we are partnered with the South Central AHEC, and we support our department's mission statement by inventing a healthier future for families and communities in San Antonio, South Texas, and beyond through excellence in patient-centered care, research, and education. If you need a copy of your CME transcript, please be sure to visit the CME website. The address is there. You can also contact myself as well, Nicole Rubio, if you have any questions on your CME transcript. And also AFP credit is available for those who are members and are interested. Please be sure to contact them, or you can again contact myself, and I'm happy to help. And this presentation, there is no conflict of interest for Dr. Korman or Dr. Nadeau. They have no relevant financial interest with commercial interest to disclose. So today they are going to be discussing with you leadership in our own words, and I will let them go ahead and get started.
Okay, thank you so much, Nicole. So I'm really excited to host this session today, to put this on. Leadership is something that I'm personally very interested in. I know Dr. Nadeau is as well, and we've been talking about this for a while. We thought with this being match week and we have a new crop of interns coming in, and our interns now are going into their upper level years, and their leadership becomes more and more important. And so we wanted to make sure we address that deliberately and directly, and kind of open the conversation to talking about leadership. I'd also really like to thank especially our local leaders, Dr. Hepburn, Dr. Hyen, and Dr. Wiemers, without whom we would not be able to do this presentation. So I'm very, very grateful. And thank you, Dr. Nadeau. So our objectives, we're going to analyze a few situations from the perspective of a leader, demonstrate the different qualities that make for effective leadership, and discuss common pitfalls and misconceptions when it comes to leadership and leadership failures. So just as an intro, why are we discussing this? Leadership is important. I mean, I think obviously it is. The difference between success and failure in a variety of missions can be hung on leadership. We want to talk about what we think a leader can be or can't be. I think a misconception in my own life is I thought a leader had a certain personality and a certain way of being, and that was the only way to do it. And I think with time and experience, I've grown to see that there's different flavors of leaders, and each of which can be very effective in a variety of situations. We also wanted to open our eyes to new opportunities in leadership and find new ways to demonstrate leadership. So just because you are not necessarily the chief on a service, or you are not the designated leader, does not mean that you can't demonstrate leadership and set an example for other people. So I just wanted to show a variety of situations to demonstrate that reality. So some further examples. So we see these every day, right? A chief resident to her co-residents, the doctor to his or her patients. This applies to all of us, right? Even if we may not be established leadership as a doctor, you are the leader of your community in a lot of ways. The matriarch or patriarch, I don't want to be too narrow, of a household. You lead your family and your kids. You set the example for them, and you show them what is okay and what is not okay. A teacher to his or her students, a clinical director to his staff. So some of these are more obvious leadership roles, and then some we kind of take for granted, but are really truly leadership roles. So what does it take to be a leader? There's a lot of interesting study on this, but one of the organizations that we looked into, the American Association for Physician Leaders, I would definitely recommend looking at their website. They have a lot of good information as far as sort of intellectualizing leadership and getting to an understanding and reading more about leadership data and what it takes to become a good leader. So they have discussed 7 measures of a good leader, and that means for them being adaptable, being flexible in a variety of situations, being ethical, having a set of principles that you adhere to, visionary as in having your own idea of what the future can look like, and your own goals, introspective, meaning that you reflect on your actions and your behavior of the past, vigilant as you keep your eye out for opportunities for leadership, tactical is having basically a strategy, and knowledgeable is always being open to new information in whatever scenario you're in. So I wanted to have those in mind as we go through these case situations and discuss what are the qualities that were lacking or were present in each situation, and how could we keep those in mind going forward when we go through difficult scenarios? What are we missing, and what are we doing well? Okay, so the long and short of what we're doing today. What we'd like to do is small group sessions. So Nicole has kindly divided out the entire Grand Rounds participants into 4 groups. In each group, you'll receive 1 case that was provided by our leaders. In those small groups, you will receive a link to a Google document that has the case, and it'll have some discussion questions, things to consider. And the way these cases are presented is basically we're leaving you with the conflict, and we would like to find how you resolve it and how what we can learn from an outside perspective on these things. So we'll break up into about 15 minutes or so with your leaders. Yes, sir, Dr. Nadeau.
Yeah, so just before we break, I want to make a comment. So go ahead and say what you're going to say.
Please go ahead.
So yeah, so leadership is one of my favorite topics. I enjoy talking about it and teaching it. And I think there's it's not just something you can learn from a book. I think this sort of some didactic learning, some things that we can actually teach you about leadership is important. But then I think you need to take this and actually try it out yourself, right? Using your own big personality, your own style, based on the specific set of circumstances that you find yourself in. So we had a in-person leadership Grand Rounds not too terribly long ago, I guess slightly before COVID. But we're going to try this format, try to do something a little interactive on Zoom. And I'm hopeful that you'll comment in the evaluation at the end about how you thought this worked, hopefully well. And if not, some do-betters, because maybe we can do this a little more frequently, a little more regularly, and with a little more smoothness after we get our rhythm down a little bit.
Yes, thank you. So that's something important to mention, is that this is an experiment, what we're doing, and it's okay if it's a little uncomfortable, it feels a little awkward. We want to learn from this experience and find what works. And I'm going to ask if you wouldn't mind turning your cameras on when we're in the small group discussion. I think that helps people. It feels more like a real discussion if we can see people's faces and we're talking. And I really just want this to be very open-ended, and whatever reflections you have, I want to hear. And we all can learn from each other's perspectives. Okay. So, and anything else, Dr. Nadeau? Anything else I'm missing?
Oh, let's do it. Let's do this.
Okay, let's do it. So we'll break you out into rooms. Okay, so let's see. Am I still sharing my screen?
You are now.
Yep,
Wow.
it's on there.
Wonderful. Okay, so I hope everyone had wonderful group discussions. I know we did with Dr. Hepburn. Thank you all for participating and humoring me and Dr. Nadeau in doing this activity. So next, what we'll do is hopefully you assign one person from your group to read your case for us. I'll have them on the slides right here. And you can tell us what conclusions you came to, what questions were raised, and then we'll go from there. So group one with Dr. Hyen.
Hello, I am the spokesperson. Hello, everyone. It's Jasmine. So I'll go ahead and read the process or the scenario here, and then I'll let y'all know the talking points we discussed. So a hospital administrator, unfamiliar with your processes, accuses your clinic leadership team of not having proper processes for granting leave for faculty and residents at your clinic for 3 months during the hospital's administrator's routine meeting with your boss. So the medical director offers his resignation when hearing about this complaint. On Friday, your boss arranges for a Monday morning meeting with you. So in case we have to kind of clarify for ourselves, like the scenario. So in case y'all need that as well, it's like the idea that you're the chair of a department, the dean of like the whole organization is your boss, and receive a complaint from one of these hospital administrators that your clinic that you are the overseer of wasn't following proper processes, and now your clinic director is like, hey, I'll leave if this is an issue. So it's like, what will you do? So some of the things we discussed was number one, kind of gathering information and facts, kind of preparing for this Monday morning meeting over the weekend. We said that we would look at what has actually been going on, because this complaint might not necessarily be factual, because the administrator was unfamiliar with the processes. So we would take a look at some of those factual things, like when were the leave requests made, why were the leave requests made, because it could be a variety of issues. Someone could have a death in the family, someone could have had health issues. So we would take a look at all those facts so that we have those ready. We would also keep in mind that we want to not be defensive in the meeting with our boss. We don't want to come off as in a very defensive manner, but rather in like a controlled, assertive manner. Again, like using the facts that we have. And we also discussed the point that perhaps this hospital administrator or the system within which the hospital administrator works doesn't allow them to understand our processes or to have this kind of disconnect. And so we just talked about all of those moving parts. And we said that we wouldn't think it would be necessary that anyone needs to resign. It seemed more of an issue that things need to be clarified from the top down. And so, yeah, several people brought up several of those different points. And it was a very fruitful discussion to understand the intricacies of what kind of goes into making a decision at a leadership level. You have to think about the ones above you and the ones below you as well. So that was the gist, I believe, of what we talked about. Yep.
That's great. So it sounds like it's kind of a complicated scenario, and it can feel very intense and threatening. Someone saying, I'm leaving, I'm out of here based on what's going on. But keeping your head is very important. Maintaining your composure and trying to find a strategy to get a workable solution is the goal. Dr. Hyen, do you have any additional thoughts or comments about your experience and how did it turn out? You're muted, sir.
Sorry. Glad to share that. Yeah, indeed, I gathered information over the weekend. I discovered that there were very reasonable opportunities or reasons for the observed facts. And I also had assurance that the processes were proper in the clinic to do what needed to happen. More, and also importantly, I took responsibility. If this is happening, I need to take responsibility. And once I heard what my boss and his people were saying, I wrote down what they said. I explained clearly what I needed to happen. And then I asked for a salary increase for all my staff. And they said yes.
Well, that makes it a win-win scenario, huh?
Yes.
So making lemonade out of lemons, out of what is a very tenuous and difficult situation, and you were able to get your footing by doing your homework, and finding a
And
pathway.
it was an opportunity to articulate the value of our group and the value of our contribution to the larger mission, and in a way that it otherwise would not necessarily be in the forefront.
Mhm.
So that's
Great. Yeah. I mean,
And-
understanding that these 10 things can actually be opportunities for growth and for good opportunities for your staff and for the people you take care of.
in internal principles, I would say from Steve Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, seek fears first to understand, begin with an end in mind. And from Jim Collins' Good to Great, I would say when something goes wrong, you look in the mirror till you take responsibility.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Hyan, and thank you, Jasmine, for doing that. You did a great job. Okay, so next group with Dr. Weimer's case.
Muted.
Sina.
Oh.
Are you there, Sina? Did we lose her?
Sorry, I did the same thing
there.
Dr. Hyan did.
Okay, so I'll let you.
All right, so our case discussion was about a previous medical center. As a women's health faculty, great limitations were placed on birth control. This was done to protect nonprofit status in a Catholic institution. You respected the decision, but felt it was important to continue the educational piece and the uses of birth control for other medical reasons. You find that fellow faculty at this institution feel differently, and that documenting contraceptive options for purposes other than contraception was unethical within the institution. Okay, so in our discussion, we realized that definitely a certain level of adaptability and tactful and organized approach to addressing this dilemma was important. I mean, respecting the hierarchy that you're a part of and the institution that you've signed on to, but at the same time, providing constructive feedback consistently without being kind of intimidated by the system was important. I guess to clarify, the educational part of in this excerpt, it refers to education for the residents, the resident education. And so we were talking about the limitations that it could have for not just our residents or these residents being aware or knowledgeable about the practices that are outside of this institution, and how that could limit even their board exam preparation. And to start off with, asking the residents and the faculty about their opinions about these things. What are their opinions and how do they feel about it? Do they want more education on these limited topics at this institution, or are they happy with that? And we came up with options, even having electives outside of the institution for those who are more interested in it. We thought about using the input from the community that you're a part of to come up with solutions. Going back to the previous faculty and staff, how did they manage or address this issue? So we don't have to recreate the wheel, right? You don't have to reinvent. You can work from where things have been going. And I'm sure adaptability is not just for current status, for the past as well. So given using all that you have and the resources that you have to be a proponent of education, because you have to respect the values of all these different people around you. Can't necessarily create a revolution that necessarily produces results in a limited institution like this. So results are produced by respectful, consistent feedback and input, and getting communication from all these people that are involved. Yeah, that was definitely, and then for the patients themselves, we were saying that definitely you want to offer resources to them. Just because the institution or the practitioner has certain values that are that limit their decisions doesn't mean the patient should have the same limitations. So being able to offer other resources that they could go to if we can't offer those same things is important as well. Yeah, those were the things that we were talking about. Anything else, Dr. Wiemers? Or?
Yeah, so unfortunately, this was a case where it didn't go so great. My sister says that I am flexible 99% of the time, but watch out when I get passionate or mad. And I was very passionate about this. Just like Dr. Hyan said, seek first to understand, I made an assumption that everyone would be on the same page. Bold ahead in a morning report. And there were faculty that were not on the same page. I am not Catholic. I should have thought to understand better, and still use my passion. I mean, I think that's the thing. Use your powers for good. It's good to be passionate, but do it controlled and get your information first. And then we talked there. I don't think, my immediate goal was like, the patient should have this access. The resident should get education. But I probably should have been a little more introspective and, to understand realistic goals. Again, we talked about in our meeting to figure out who my allies were, to figure out what other options we had. And it became a very uncomfortable morning report and poor educational experience for the residents, because one of the faculty was generally known as a difficult person, but we had forged a relationship. And once you ruin those relationships, they're very hard to recreate. And so you can have difference of opinions with people and still move ahead. And so it was a great learning experience. So I think those are the big take homes is, you don't have to fix things immediately. You don't have to have an answer immediately. First, understand where your colleagues are coming from and what, if they're on your page, not on your page, and do everything in a controlled manner, and do have, an end in mind that can be reasonable, and some flexibility for that end if it's not possible. But that was the take home. Don't do what I did.
So that's fantastic. No, it's the importance of strategy, the importance of seeing the long game, and weighing the interests of all the people around you, and as well as the patients. So I think that's great and very educational. And I told Dr. Hepburn this in our small group, but I wanted to say it to all of you, is that I really appreciate y'all taking the time, and sometimes we learn things the hard way. And I think the stories are giving us, they're learning things the hard way, but you telling us that helps us not learn the hard way. So it means a lot to us to hear from you guys and hear about your experiences. So great case. Thank you, Sina. Thank you, Dr. Wiemers. So next we'll move on to our third case, Dr. Hepburn's case. And Dr. Candelario will be presenting.
Okay, so our group, I'll read the vignette. You have a colleague with whom you share a clinic space. You have noticed that they are frequently late to work, and in addition, you believe you recently smelled alcohol on their breath. They also have been behaving inappropriately with office staff who are beginning to take notice. So in our group, we all agreed that we would confront the person in a non-confrontational way, also in private, and we would just find out more information about what's going on and what that person is going through, whether it's substance abuse, depression, or maybe a health issue. And then going based on that information that we collected or we talked about, we would decide whether to bring that issue up to either the director or the module director, taking into account the patient safety. If patient safety were at risk, then we would it would warrant involving higher up leadership, maybe involving the director directly instead of a module director. Something we also discussed was that they might not be happy at first being confronted, but in the long run, they may be in the long run they would be grateful, likely for intervening. Anything my
That's
group wants
great.
to
No,
add?
I
missed.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. So yeah, that's a challenging situation. And so the conversation we ended up having was really to keep the human side in mind, that this is a person, and it likely they may not be aware that people are noticing, and you bringing it to their attention that you see what's going on can help them become aware of what's going on and address it. And so we wanted to keep that in mind. Dr. Hepburn, let's see, oh, there you are. If you have anything to add, please, by all means.
No, so in this case, I would mirror what Dr. Weimer just said. This was what I gave Dr. Korman as a leadership failure on my part. So I wasn't in a formal leadership position. I was right out of residency when this happened. I was a brand new physician in a clinic with several very senior physicians, very capable. Everybody was very capable in that clinic. This person, this impaired person, it turned out that she was impaired, was a senior nurse who was very well liked. And obviously, she wouldn't have been there if she wasn't very capable. But these subtle changes did take place, and it progressed. And being new to the team, I had all my excuses. I didn't do what Dr. Candelario just said, which is the right thing to do, is to say, hey, nurse, whatever, I won't give a name. Could I just talk to you for a few minutes? And this is what I'm observing. I was wondering if you could give me some insight into, to be compassionate about it. Try to gain that information first. Now, the team did talk about, and I gave an example too, whenever there's patient safety in question, and that's, unfortunately, you don't have the time to do that. Many times you have to just act immediately if it's something very egregious. And I gave an example of a OBGYN doctor that was inebriated when he was supposed to be called in for a crash C-section one night in the winter. True story. So in those situations, you need to act. And you need to have the strength of character to do that. And certainly if you see something that's amoral, unethical, or illegal, you need to act too. And that doesn't mean you're not compassionate, but that's where you get into the tough love. But most of the time, these subtle changes will take place. And I hate to say it, but we talked about it. In my medical career, this won't just happen one time, unfortunately. So you'll need to do this. And the more you can do it on a proactive way to what we just talked about, and get that person the help that he or she may need before it becomes an impairment, that's always the best course, really it is. And so, but you have to have the integrity and strength of character to do it. And that's leading up. And but as far as a book, a leader, got a ton of them out. I'm old school. I still have books, and they're on my shelf at home and here. But one that I think is a good one for all new professionals is Simon Sinek's "Start with Why." You need to make sure you and the members of your team really know why they're doing, whether they're engaged in that profession. And you have to have an individual and a team sense of purpose and selfless service, in our case as health providers, to be successful and to be fulfilled too. And you'll see in life's journey, there are a lot of people that go down false paths, if you will, and get caught up in whatever it is, having the latest Maserati or whatever, and condo in Vail, which we'd all like to have, by the way, but you know what I'm saying. And they forget why they're doing what they're doing and being focused on the right reasons. So I would, and you can actually, what you can do, and if you don't want to read the book, there's some great TED Talks that Sinek does, and you could just listen to them or watch them on YouTube, and they're really motivational, but they're also very, very insightful. And then when you get into positions of responsibility, when you graduate for the residents, make sure you use those in your teaching for your colleagues and your team members. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hepburn. So I have a list of books that'll be at the end of the slide, and I can email them out if you're interested. I'm a big reader myself. So let's move on to the fourth group really quick. This is a really interesting case, and I think we've all experienced something similar. So
Okay, so although I helped write the instructions, we didn't totally follow the instructions. I neglected to choose somebody from the group, but I'm going to ask two things. First, I'm going to tell you about my book. It's Execution, Larry Bossidy and Ram Charan. It makes the point that if your strategic planning is great, but if you come up with strategic plans that cannot be executed with the people or materials or resources that you have, then it's all for naught. So it's a good book about the perspective you should take when strategic planning. And then I'm going to ask Yoon to just give a couple of minutes about the conversation. And actually, if Ross is still on the call, he gave a nice summary at the end, and if he'd share a little bit of that with us, I'd appreciate that. So Yoon, would you mind helping us?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, so this case took place in the inpatient service. So you're the attending, you have a team of 3 different residents, 1 from each year. So PGY1, PGY2, PGY3. And this happened when you're doing a bedside round. In front of the patient, in the patient room, the PGY1, PGY2 and PGY3 starting to have an argument in front of the patient. It got really heated in a short amount of time. So it's very embarrassing situation. So as attending, what would you do in this case? So I think the team unanimously agreed this is unprofessional, inappropriate. So as attending, you need to diffuse the situation, stop that argument, and pull the team outside and apologize to the patient that had happened. So, I mean, there is a human side of this. You as an attending might be angry or upset because this had happened in front of you. So we all kind of agreed we'll probably take a minute to cool down and then talk to the team and talk to the 2 residents who were in the argument themselves individually, find out what's going on, but definitely address the team. This is unprofessional. We'll try to come up with a solution to prevent this from happening again. Give the feedback in a timely fashion and appropriately. So just help also model professional behavior on your own. That's pretty much what we talked about. And Dr. Nadeau didn't tell us what he actually did in that situation.
Well, I liked Ross's formulation at the end better than what I actually did. So maybe you could share a minute of that one.
I find that I usually learn when I look at myself. And so my thoughts were, as soon as you're out of the room, and rounds are usually you're busy, but ask each person there what they saw or what happened while we were in the room. And just let them briefly give an explanation of what they saw happen from their point of view. And then I agree with saying, you know, I don't think that was appropriate, but what I would like for each of you to do is, after we go through with rounds and we have a little time, I would like for you to come back and let's get together and discuss, how would you do this differently next time to avoid this from happening again? And then you have more time to discuss details about what happened and what their proposals are.
Thank you, Ross. I appreciate that.
Okay, well, I think we're out of time, but I want to thank all of you so much for your participation. This was, I think I enjoyed it. I hope everyone else did. Thank you, Dr. Reimers, Dr. Hyen, Dr. Hepburn, and Dr. Nadeau for sharing your stories and helping us learn from your experiences, because I think we never forget the stories we hear. You know, you read something in a book, that's one thing, but when you hear someone you know and you respect has gone through these issues, it stays in your brain forever. So thank you so much. I have a list of books for continuing education from our leaders, and I can send those out in an email at after this is over. So please give us your feedback. Thank you for participating in this experiment and having an open mind. Have a good afternoon, everybody. I'll see you later.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
so
Hannah.
much, everybody.
Thank you, Nicole. You're amazing.
No, great session. I really enjoyed it.
Great. Good.
Bye.